This is Faye D'Souza. A lot of people were tracking the Aryan Khan case bail hearing that was happening in court today. The update for those of you who don't know, it will continue to be heard tomorrow. Mr. Mukul Rothi, senior advocate of the Supreme Court, making arguments on behalf of Aryan Khan, but there's a larger conversation that we need to have about it. Two things have happened since the last time we examined this case. And it's not really just about this case, but this case could be a symptom of larger things that are happening in our country. One, there have been several very worrying allegations about the conduct of the officers of the NCB, specifically one, Sameer Wankade. Two, it does seem like perhaps these allegations have weakened the NCB's case. We've had many senior retired officers of the police force argue that the NCB's real job is to break international drug cartels and to prevent the movement of large quantities of drugs in our country. Why are they then spending so much time and energy on this one case? Is it warranted? These are questions that we're asking right now. And to help us answer those questions, we have Mr. Dushyant Dave, senior advocate of the Supreme Court of India, who joins us at this point. Mr. Dave, good evening, and thank you for your time. We're extremely grateful.
Good evening to you, and good evening to your viewers as well.
Just coming straight to the arguments being made today by Mr. Rothi in court, he did argue that there was no possession by his client, that there was no blood or urine test conducted to establish that there was no consumption, and that he was wrongly being held for the last 20 days. From your examination of the details that have been reported so far, do you believe that the NCB's case right now is weakening?
Well, let me not give my own opinion. Let me first,
Yes.
give to the viewers the opinions of the judiciary. Justice Nitin Sambre, who's hearing the case in a 2018 judgment, this is 27th August 2018 in Sohail Sameer versus Maharashtra, had this to say while releasing somebody on bail. Small quantity, 430 grams in that case, was recovered from accused. Punishment prescribed under section 20B2A is maximum 1 year. And as such, in my opinion, the applicant is entitled to be released. Apart from aforesaid considerations, the fact remains that there are no similar criminal antecedents against the applicant, nor it is the case of prosecution that narcotic substance seized from the accused were for commercial trade. Now, if these were the observations and if this were the judgment of Justice Sambre as early as 2018, I think the learned judge would have been well advised to follow his own judgment today and release Aryan Khan straight away on the basis of this order. It doesn't stop here. There are two direct judgments of the Supreme Court. Justice Nageshwar Rao and Justice Deepak Gupta, speaking in Sujit Tiwari versus Gujarat in 2020, said, prosecution stories, and this is under NDPS Act, that appellant was aware of what his brother was doing and was actively helping his brother. At this stage, we would not like to comment on merits of the allegations leveled against the present appellant. But other than the few WhatsApp messages and his own statement which he has resiled from, there is very little other evidence. At this stage, it appears that appellant may not even be aware of the entire conspiracy because the prosecution story is brother himself did not know what was loaded on the ship till he was informed by the owner. At this stage, without going into merits, we feel that case of appellant herein is totally different from other reasonable possibilities that he may be acquitted. He has been behind bars. He must be given bail. Now, this is what the judges of the Supreme Court said on. Now, I mean, I can't understand in the face of his own judgment, what is there for Justice Nitin Sambre to hear? Undisputably, if this young man has not been found in possession of any, narcotic substance, then he can't even be charged. Forget, bail. He should not have been charged in the first instance by the Narcotics Control Bureau. This is a malicious prosecution. This is a false prosecution. And the judge should have been very conscious of it because he has been reading in newspapers what has really happened in this case. So I am really astonished that judges are not even bothered about the life and liberty of the citizens, which is fundamentally guaranteed under the Constitution by virtue of Article 21. And every judge takes an oath to uphold the Constitution of India. So I really feel sad. I feel deeply disappointed. And as a citizen, I feel deeply hurt that my judiciary is not standing for the citizens.
Mr. Dave, I also have to ask you about these WhatsApp chats that have become very popular with the NCB. We saw them use WhatsApp chats heavily last year during the Rhea Chakrabarti case. They're talking about WhatsApp chats as well. Now, these are chats apparently that took place several years ago. And also we've had Mr. Rothi argue today in court that because these chats took place several years ago, they cannot be argued that it's part of a conspiracy which is linked in any way to the cruise ship now. But I have two questions here. One, the question of whether WhatsApp chats are admissible at all. And, where does that leave privacy of ordinary citizens if, any sort of officers, police or revenue officers in this case, can take WhatsApp chats from cell phones and release them to the media, which is what we've seen happened again today. The media was running private chats of individuals on their screen just before this hearing began.
Well, privacy is an entirely different issue. There is nothing called now privacy left in our society, and especially in this country. I think the government or its agencies do not respect privacy of citizens. Pegasus is a classic example what the government has done. I mean, they have been, intruding into the private lives of citizens. Forget privacy of WhatsApp chats. I mean, Pegasus is something which has entered into bedrooms of citizens. So I think that, we have now reached a situation where this government will not stop at anything to really go after its opponents and people who are high profile. Having said that, let me tell you something more serious. You see, Narcotics Act, the Narcotics, Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act of 1985 was enacted by Parliament to empower central government to stop narcotics trade in the country. Now, in a recent interview in India Today, the Mr. Pradhan, Narcotics Bureau Chief, has admitted that there are 50 million users in this country. One. Two, he has also admitted that Mundra's, consignment from 30 kilos to 3 tons perhaps was not an isolated incident. Now, 50 million consumers are using tons and tons of psychotropic and narcotic substances. Who is allowing them to come into India? The Narcotics Control Bureau? Why is it being allowed? Why are they damning the users? Why is it that the very source is not being attacked? Have you heard of a single haul? Have you heard of any single person, a large-scale dealer? You think that this kind of a trade is happening by some small petty traders that they are arresting? Even in Mundra case, they have arrested some small petty traders. I mean, God forbid, if this is the way Narcotics Control Bureau is functioning, then nobody can be saved in this country. We all know that virtually entire generation of people are addicted to drugs in Punjab. And Punjab is losing that whole generation of people. Virtually every second, third home is having addicts. It's a sad commentary on us as a nation where law enforcement agencies are not doing their job and instead are running after innocent citizens like this Mr. Aryan Khan, and only to hide the truth, only to take away the minds of the people. And sadly, the media plays into their hands because the media is constantly showing Aryan Khan for last 24 days. Nobody in media is asking a question that Mr. Pradhan, you and your team, including this kind gentleman, Mr. Wankhede in Bombay, what the hell have they done to stop this trade? How many big fish have been arrested by you? How many consignments have been intercepted by you? No. So, I mean, it's really a sham that this kind of, action should be taken. It's, to my mind, these officers have done a great disservice to the law, disservice to the nation, and disservice to citizens.
So, Dave, in fact, I've had several conversations with Mr. B.V. Kumar, who was the former director of the DRI and of the NCB, who also said very clearly that the NCB and the DRI were constituted and empowered by the NDPS Act in order to break cartels that were moving large amounts of drugs into our country and getting our children addicted to these drugs. But you did say in this conversation that this government, I'm quoting, you said this government will stop at nothing. Do you believe that our national investigating agencies, the NCB, the DRI, the CBI, the NIA, the Enforcement Directorate, who've been, who have laws like UAPA, prevention of money laundering, These are the laws, the very strong laws to empower them. Are they now being used for political purposes, Mr. Ravi?
Do you need more proof than the fact that not a single person associated with Bharatiya Janata Party, not a single person who is working with them has ever been even investigated, much less raided by these agencies? Are you suggesting that there is corruption only in the opposition parties and that the Enforcement Directorate, Income Tax Authority, CBI, etc., will only raid opposition parties, their leaders and their relatives? I mean, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, we all know what's happening in the country. We know the level of corruption which is going on in the country, including in the BJP-run states. I mean, it's really a sad commentary that these agencies are being utilized as private armies for the party in power to run after the opposition. And it has happened for last 7 years. You have seen when they wanted to break the Karnataka government, they raided Mr. Shiv Kumar. When they wanted to break Madhya Pradesh government, they raided others. Now they are raiding Maharashtra minister's sisters. I mean, let's understand one thing. These agencies, I am really shocked that these high officers are willing to act as private armies for the party in power. It's a very sad commentary. I am not saying for a moment, I am not defending those who are guilty for violating the law, whether they are in opposition or not. They must be investigated. But can the investigation only be confined to the opposition? Why not? I have not heard of a single case of anybody from the Bharatiya Janata Party in last 7 years who has even been investigated, much less raided. And I know personally, there are a large number of people across the board who should be investigated and who should be, asked to answer how their wealth has suddenly come up within the ruling party. Everybody knows that. So it's really a sad commentary that in every case, as you rightly said, UAPA, for example, it was utilized to target those innocent students who were, opposing the CAA. I mean, and those ministers who made most provocative statements to incite riots and violence leading to deaths of citizens, they have not even been, charged. So yes, these agencies, frankly, have really outlived their purposes. Time has come when this country should wake up and ensure that these agencies are abolished and let the ordinary police really take the law enforcement into their own hands.
Quite a strong statement. I want to ask you specifically about the Mundra drug seizure, Mr. Dave. 3,000 kgs of heroin came out of 2 containers. The DRI, which is the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, was actually investigating it. The DRI got pulled up by the court, which was hearing the case, for not investigating Adani ports, not actually getting in touch with the Indian embassy in overseas to find out where the drugs had come from. And then the case was incidentally lock, stock and barrel transferred to the NIA, which according to former officers of the DRI doesn't normally happen. What happens is the NIA is asked to assist, but it's never entirely transferred. This is the first time that has happened. Do you believe that there's more to this? And I just want to add that my team and I put together, simply from news reports, 10 other similar seizures that have happened in the Indian Ocean using the Sri Lankan, the Mauritius and the Indian Coast Guard, adding up to 31,000 crore rupees worth of hard narcotics that were being brought into our country on boats and shipping and fishing trawlers. Do you think there's something more going on here that may be covered up?
Well, as I said, if Mr. Pradhan himself makes a statement that there are 50 million users, what must be the amount of narcotic substances coming into India? I mean, it has to be in hundreds of tons every year. If he says 50 million, it is really something very serious. There is no doubt in my mind that Narcotics Control Bureau and other agencies, central agencies, have singularly failed to really counter and much less stop the narcotics trade in this country. And you must understand one thing, that the money coming or money which is made by these narcotic suppliers is utilized for terrorist activities. We all know that.
Yes.
These monies, these narcotics come from Afghanistan. We have to therefore, at whatever cost we have to stop them, we must stop them. but we are not even making any effort. We are wasting 24 valuable days of Narcotics Control Bureau Bombay office into fighting this young man's, bail, which should have been given on the first day by the judge himself. So what kind of a Narcotics Control Bureau is this? I am really astonished to say. I mean, Mr. Pradhan is a good man. He should lead his team in such a way. And Mr. Amit Shah, who is directly, in charge of these agencies, should ensure. After all, Mr. Amit Shah and Mr. Modi have promised that they will bring better governance in the country. Do they want our youth? Do they want our youth to be ruined by this? We all know. See, today you go to any party in, any youngster, ask any youngster going to any party in Delhi, Bombay, Madras, any big or small town. In many parties, drug use is quite common. You ask many law students, in many law schools, national law schools, drug use is quite common. Why is it happening? It is happening. You go to Nizamuddin, for example. I play golf at the Delhi Golf Club, and many caddies who live in Nizamuddin tell me quite regularly that, sir, drug abuse is extremely prevalent in Nizamuddin area. We are not able to stop. So who is responsible for it? This great Narcotics Control Bureau. So the future generations of Indians are being killed because of the connivance, because of the inefficiency, because of the failure of this bureau, which has been specially constituted to fight them. Section 4 of the Act of 1985 expressly says government will take all necessary measures to stop it. Why is central government not doing anything? Let's forget that Congress failed, as both Mr. Modi says. What about Mr. Modi since last 7 years? What has he done to stop this kind of a heinous, crime? After all, if our youth are going to be addicted to drugs, it is going to be absolutely a disastrous situation, as we are seeing in the Western world or in countries like Mexico. So I really hope and pray that Prime Minister and Mr. Amit Shah, who profess to really do something good in their heart for India, really intervene and take stock of the situation to stop this kind of nonsensical, trade which is going on.
Mr. Dave, the amounts of money you did mention that is coming in with these drugs, that 31,000 crore rupees, 21,000 crore rupees. Just to give our audience, a sense, 35,000 crore rupees is what the government of India allocated to the entire vaccine project in the last union budget. 31,000 crore rupees is what we have calculated. There's the street value of the drugs that have been seized over the last couple of years. This money, Mr. Ravi, is enough to upend an economy. Is this the reason? Where do you think this money is going? What kind of activities is it fueling? And is it possible for ordinary criminals to be able to funnel this kind of money?
Look, let us understand one thing. Even countries like United States of America have not been able to fight drug menace. The drugs are coming into America from Mexico and other countries very routinely. And these drug smugglers every day adopt innovative ways to push drugs into a country. We have a particularly serious problem because Afghanistan is just across Pakistan. And Afghanistan is known to be the largest producer of these drugs. There are parts of India, in Himachal, Malana, for example, and many other parts of India which produce these drugs. The agencies know that. Look at the regular trade in Goa. Everybody talks about it, that the Russians and the Israelis are involved in it when you go to Goa. You ask any local man and he will tell you about it. I have no personal knowledge about it. But this is what I have heard from local taxi drivers and waiters and other people in Goa as and when I have gone. Now, do you think Narcotics Control Bureau is not supposed to gather this intelligence and act? Why don't they strike at them? So we have a very, very serious problem because Afghanistan via Pakistan, we is bound to push. Our borders are guarded by border security force. The BSF and the army have an absolute duty to stop this at any cost. Where is it coming from? Now, if drugs are coming in like this from land or sea routes or from air routes, then I think there is something seriously a failure on the part of the government in protecting our borders. And if this happens today for drugs, Tomorrow it might happen with very serious weapons. We are vulnerable as a nation because of our neighbors. So I think there is a very greater, I think I would say, onerous duty, greater responsibility on the part of this government to really fight this in as scientific, as intelligent way as they can. Instead of attacking the users, they should attack the traders, the smugglers, the importers, and the distributors. They should attack them. Encourage these users not to use it. Take them to whatever measures they have to take. Persuade them. Launch a campaign. So I don't know what is in mind of the government.
Mr. Tabe, I also want to ask you about the reputation of the NIA now, of the NCB, I beg your pardon, in this. There have been some very serious accusations that have come up of, witness statements being taken on blank sheets of paper, of extortion. One witness is currently absconding. The police is looking for him. Do you think this weakens the standing of, in your opinion, the NCB and its case at this point? Is this a desperate attempt to frame someone who they didn't get any evidence on?
Look, the prosecution methods have been subject to, debate in India for a long, long time. And, that is one of the reasons why India has one of the lowest conviction rates in the world. In Japan, conviction rate is as high as 99% because no innocent person will ever be charged in Japan. In India, it's very common to charge one and sundry and put up this, self-serving panchas. All the panchanamas which are made, the panchas who sign them are professional panchas engaged by police and investigating agencies. And if you look to their credentials, their track record, you'll find that most of them are criminals in one form or the other. So these kind of methods that the prosecuting agencies adopt are a matter of serious doubt. Problem is that our judges do not comment upon them. Problem is our judges do not damn them. Problem is our judges do not order inquiry against these police officers. That's a real problem. And I must read to you one judgment of the Supreme Court, although it was in the context of section 498A, the dowry deaths cases. But this is what Supreme Court said, and that's fortunately, I was responsible last year in having this law incorporated when I argued before the Supreme Court as amicus curiae that all prisoners who are facing less than 7 years of conviction or sentence should be released. Yes. And the Honorable Supreme Court, Chief Justice Bobde's bench and now Chief Justice Ramnath's bench have been kind enough to continue to release them because they say we don't want our prisoners to die in, if they are facing a sentence of 7 years and less. This boy, if worse, is going to face 1 year. He could never be sent to jail. This is what Supreme Court said in this case, Arnesh Kumar in 2014. Our endeavor in this judgment is to ensure that police officers do not arrest the accused unnecessarily and magistrates do not authorize detention casually and mechanically. In order to ensure what we have observed above, we give the following directions. And one of the directions is that failure to comply with the aforesaid direction shall, apart from rendering police officers concerned liable for departmental action, they shall also be liable to be punished for contempt of court to be instituted before High Court having territorial jurisdiction. Now, this is the law of the land given by Supreme Court. And this was, on 23rd of March 2020, Chief Justice Bobde, Justice Nageshwar Rao, and Justice Suryakant adopted this judgment and said the high-powered committee shall take into account the directions contained in para 11 of Arnesh Kumar versus State of Bihar. Now, just see, if this is what the Supreme Court directed, then where is the question of arresting people like Mr. Aryan Khan, who at the worst can be sent to jail for 1 year, although there is no case against him whatsoever. So I don't know what's wrong with us as a nation. I don't know what's wrong with our magistracy. I don't know what's wrong with our high courts. If they don't want to follow their own law, then why do they complain all the time against politicians and the executives, saying that they don't follow our judgments? They themselves according to me, guilty of contempt of court. Because subordinate judiciary can't go against the Supreme Court's judgment. So it's a very, and NIA, I must give you one, very funny example. The Supreme Court appointed NIA to investigate that Hadia's case from Kerala, where she had voluntarily married a Muslim, gentleman. And NIA accepted the offer given by the Supreme Court and agreed to investigate that love marriage. Now, if this is the level at which NIA can go, then, less said, better about the NIA.
There's a question, if you don't mind, for a few minutes, Mr. Ravi, to answer a couple of questions. Samik Chaudhary asked this question. He says, how will us as Indians ever restore our faith in central and state agencies and the judiciary after these institutions now looking blatantly partisan, like the NIA, for example, or the NCB?
Mr. Chaudhary, let me tell you one thing. I am a proud permanent pessimist, and I don't see any hope. I don't see any hope. And honestly, as a result, my life is virtually now spent, I'm 66 years of age, but I'm genuinely worried about my grandchildren. I'm genuinely worried about tomorrow's generation. Genuinely worried. I don't see any safety for them. And if Mr. Modi, I don't agree with Mr. Modi on any issue, but with all that, he's my prime minister. And Mr. Modi has promised us good governance. If Mr. Modi fails, and he's doing everything to fail, then who can save this country? Who can save? Now, today, I just saw reports appearing in media, section of media, that some Kashmiri youth who burst crackers and celebrated when Pakistan won against India are being charged under Unlawful Prevention of Activities Act. Now, if this is so, in England, and there is a report of Times of India which had appeared, in England, third generation Indians side with the Indian team when Indian team is playing against the English team on English grounds. And English media has commented about it. But they are not saying that they are anti-national. They are not saying that they are guilty of seditious activities. So you have to understand, and Indians have justified it in this interview that appeared in Times of India quite some time back. You can just Google it and see where this Indians, third generation Indian says that we love England, but when it comes to cricket, we support India because that's our motherland. Third generation Indians. You can't just damn people for some silly thing for bursting a cracker because Pakistan team has won. And fact of the matter is that Pakistan really outwitted us, as Captain Kohli himself has said. So what is wrong about saying that Pakistan has done a good job? You don't take legal action against citizens for such childish behavior. You have to forget it.
Mr. Ravi, there's a question here from Hiren Gokani. He says, in the opinion of Mr. Ravi, considering equality before the law and personal liberty, and for our audience who doesn't know, it's a fundamental right. Your right to freedom, to not be locked up, is a fundamental right in this country that you can't give up. Forget anyone taking away from you. He said, how is it that the personal liberty of Mr. Arab Goswami was more important than the personal liberty of others? Is this, and I'm sort of taking this forward, is this a case of show me the man and I'll show you the law, Mr. Ravi? Are we interpreting differently for different people?
Well, we certainly are interpreting differently for different people. Mr. Goswami may have been entitled to bail. I am not questioning that. And Justice Chandrachud gave a very good judgment in that case. But I must say with great disappointment that when Sudha Bhardwaj went to the Supreme Court observed that you have a wonderful case, but you go to the trial court and ask for bail there. Now, that was 7, 8 months ago. She's still not released on bail. We saw Stan Swami dying because the judges were not willing to, give him bail. And then the same judges say, oh, we are sorry that he died. Did they not know that the man was suffering? Did they not know that the man was 84? Did they not know that there was nothing against him? Did they not know that the agency which had picked him up did not want his remand for a single day? So, yes, the best thing about India's judiciary, and it is very highly respected, that it is consistently inconsistent. And judges are taking very, 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 very different views. Sometimes the same judges take different views. God knows on what consideration. So that's something which is, I have not been able to, I have been a lawyer for 42 years. And yet I can't understand why judges do not follow or lay down a consistent law where nobody has to. One Supreme Court, as I told you, if these judgments say, in fact, there is one more judgment under NDPS Act of Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul of the Supreme Court, where he released a person on bail, saying in 2020, this is Sheru versus Narcotics Control Bureau, that however we are faced with unusual times where COVID situation permeates, we are conscious that this court has passed orders for release of persons on bail to decongest the bail, but that it is applicable in cases up to 7 years. In the given aforesaid facts and circumstances, we consider appropriate to enlarge the appellant on bail. Now, if this is what the Supreme Court judges have said, that man should be released on bail under Narcotics Act, I mean, did this magistracy not know this law? Does this High Court judge not know this law? On the first day, the High Court judge should have said, I set him free. You want to argue, Mr. Government? Please argue at heart's content, but first release him. It's really, really very, very sad, the way judiciary functions. Very sad.
Mr. Dave, there's also the question of Umar Khaled, who is also in jail facing UAPA in the Delhi riots case. There are several other young people still in jail on the Delhi riots case. Is there a growing tendency of prosecutors to now argue, hold these people, my lord, I will find the evidence in the meantime? And is that commensurate with what our constitution tells us about personal freedoms?
Yes, that's exactly what is happening, and that's what judges are allowing it to happen. I'll give you an example. Khalid's case, I'm not fully aware of the facts, but there was a case that I appeared in Supreme Court of Mia Qayyum, who was the president of the Jammu and Kashmir High Court Bar Association for 26 years. After 370 was abolished, he was arrested in 2019 on the charge of a case of 2008, in which he has never been sent to jail. So under Public Safety Act, they said in 2008, you had acted, you had taken out some procession and you were charged. That gentleman was for months together kept virtually in isolated cell in Agra, away from Srinagar, although his health demanded he should be near his family and family doctor. And ultimately, after repeated attempts before single judge, before division bench of the High Court and Supreme Court, almost on the fag end of his period of 12 months, fortunately, the Supreme Court ordered his release. Now, what does it tell you? That you have taken away 11.5 months of this gentleman's life, a precious life, for no reason whatsoever. The judges are all, they know the law. They don't want to implement the law. I don't know why. What is ailing this system? I am not able to understand. Is it inefficiency? Is it incompetence? Is it refusal to follow Supreme Court judgments, which they are bound by? Or is it because they are afraid of the government? What is ailing? I am unable to understand. We have a very good judiciary. Judiciary commands respect among citizens. Citizens love judges. And yet judges are doing everything to really not live up to the kind of love and faith that citizens have reposed into them. That's something which really is, I don't know how to explain it. I am part of the system. I love this system. I respect it. Yet, I am not able to understand this kind of an approach of the Indian judiciary today. It doesn't happen in countries like England, where law is consistent. A judge will follow the law scrupulously from magistrate to Supreme Court.
Mr. Dave, you did mention the Bhima Koregaon or the Elgar Parishad case and those who are under arrest and being held consistently even now. For example, you talked about Ms. Sudha Bharadwaj, who has now been in jail for 3 years facing UAPA. Isn't there a time limit within which the prosecutors or the investigators need to file their charge sheet and bring charges against this person and start the trial? Are these investigators and prosecutors allowed to hold under trials indefinitely without having presented any evidence at all before a court?
Let us understand one thing. In India, there is really nothing, no system is working perfectly. No system. And if there is no point, yes, trial should take place on day-to-day basis. You can't hold up people for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and then at the end of 5, 10, 20 years say that you are innocent, you are not guilty of the crime charge, and therefore now you go home, you are free. How are you going to compensate that person? How are you going to give back that person his life of 3 years, 5 years, 20 years that he has spent in the jails? And you know the jail conditions, they are disastrous. We all know how jails function. If you have money, you can survive. If you don't have money to survive, jail life is extremely difficult. So this is something where the judiciary at the highest level has to really apply its mind. The Supreme Court, professes itself to be a court upholding the Constitution, but it is unable to do anything about the fundamental rights of citizens which are being taken away on daily basis. Thousands of people in Kashmir, for example, on Mr. Amit Shah's visit, I read in newspaper, officer making a statement proudly that 700 people have been arrested. Why? If Mr. Shah is so much afraid, then he should not visit the valley. You can't take away liberty of 700 citizens because the Home Minister is going to visit. So nobody can do anything. They have no recourse. The High Court in Jammu and Kashmir is virtually dysfunctional insofar as fundamental rights of citizens are concerned. And the Supreme Court will simply not have time to hear them. Every day, Supreme Court is being requested to list the matters. The Supreme Court is unable to list the matters. We have no recourse at all. We have today no recourse in Supreme Court to get even the most urgent of the urgent matters listed. I have personally tried to, reach out to the honorable judges time and again and beg them that please do something where people can approach you as quickly as possible. No, it doesn't happen. So what do you do about this? And then judges pride themselves that saying that we are doing a great job, we are doing a great job. No, I know of 2 matters where I personally mentioned months ago. 2 benches directed matters to be listed next week. They have not been listed for last many months. So, I mean, if people like us fail, you can imagine, young lawyers who have no access to even mention, whose clients may be very, very small, very poor. What are they going to do? I don't know. I mean, I don't know what is really wrong with our system that we cannot. It never used to happen. When I was a young lawyer in Gujarat High Court in 1978 to 86, if a matter was filed today, it would come next day. It would be listed next day before the appropriate bench. Why can't Supreme Court have that system? I don't understand. Even in Delhi High Court today, you file a matter and it will be listed tomorrow, next day or third day. But the Supreme Court is unable to do it. And the judges only rely upon the registry, and the registry officials are very, very selective about listing for whatever reasons. So I think if this is the level at which things are ailing in Supreme Court, then what to say about the subordinate judiciary?
Mr. Dave, we were talking about Aryan Khan when we began, but there was another case involving another young person, Disha Ravi, and there was a story in this morning's Indian Express on the front page. Although I must tell our audience that this story, Indian Express quotes sources, which they have not revealed, but it basically says that the Delhi police has made no headway in their investigation in that toolkit case in which Disha Ravi was the prime accused, and she was held in jail for 10 days before being released on bail. That case is likely to face a closure report, according to the sources of Indian Express, because the investigation is just not moved. Now, here was a young person who was picked up by the police, made a circus by the media. This whole toolkit thing turned into, it's effectively the investigation has turned up naught. There's nothing there. Is this
the same lady who lost her father while she was in jail?
No, this is not the same lady. This is the young lady from Bangalore who had shared, who works with Greta.
Who was granted bail by a very strong judgment of the Delhi High Court.
Yes. Yes.
No, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to speculate because that might impair, her case. But take Bhima Koregaon case. When these people were picked up, the police theory was that they had conspired to kill the Honorable Prime Minister. When the charge sheet is filed, this charge is singularly absent. So, I mean, at a time like that, when they were arrested, any judge would have been seriously influenced that if these are the people who are conspiring to kill our Honorable Prime Minister, there is no way we can release them on bail. One doesn't grudge against those judges. It's the investigating agencies which made out a false case, spread false lies about it, and maybe made a mention of that in the FIR. When the charge sheet is filed, that is singularly missing, I'm told. So, I mean, what do we do about it? I don't know. There are no answers that I have. And I see an extremely bleak future for this country's democracy. We are in a virtual dictatorship today. And exactly what Ambedkar had said, that yes, democracy in form will be retained, democracy in fact will disappear if there is a landslide. He had warned us and on the last day of the Constituent Assembly debate. So Mrs. Gandhi with that landslide did that. Prime Minister Modi with his landslide is also amassing the kind of powers which a dictator normally possesses. Bharatiya Janata Party is a very good party. It has a great role to play in the democracy of this country along with other parties. It should really wake up to the realities. It should change whatever may have happened in 7 years. From tomorrow onwards, they must change, take a different view. In fact, prime ministers should have intervened in Aryan Khan's case. His PMO should have picked up a phone and told Mr. Wankhede that you can't arrest people like this, releasing. Then, statesmanship would have come. If Mr. Vajpayee was prime minister, he would have done it. I dare say that. If Mr. Advani was home minister, he would have done it. And this is Bharatiya Janata Party. Forget Congress. So I really hope and pray that the BJP and its leadership, present leadership, wakes up, because this is not the party that people voted for. People can't speak about it, but people voted for a party which is going to truly give a much better governance than what Congress did. With people make all kinds of allegations against the Congress party. So fair enough. But people expect BJP to be very different, which it is not.
Mr. Dave, I know I'm overshooting time, but I'll just ask you indulgence for one more question. All of the questions I asked you up till now pertain to the law and the judiciary. I want to ask you about something that's happening outside of our courts at this point, and that is the infringement of the fundamental right to expression. We've seen a pattern over the last 1 month of members of the BJP holding office within Parliament or outside, threatening brands and businesses based on advertisements released. It happened with Fab India, it happened with Dabur, it's happened with Seat. It's also recently happened with a director who was shooting for a show in Madhya Pradesh. We've had now the government of Madhya Pradesh come out and say, you will have to show us the script and only then we will give you permission to direct or to shoot. We've had a member of parliament, Pragya Thakur, say that we will form a committee that will view films before they are released and give our approval. Now, is this the fundamental altering of the fabric of our country? How do you see this?
I think sooner the citizens realize, better it is that freedom of speech and expression is only meant for those who are party in power and their supporters. For us, ordinary citizens, there is nothing called freedom of speech and expression. And we can be targeted at any point of time by the government and its selective agencies and its supporters. The government allows these supporters, as they did in Prakash Jha's, sets in Madhya Pradesh. Instead of arresting those people, the minister is giving advice to Prakash Jha and telling everybody that you must get the script approved well in advance. I think there might be a time when we might have to even have our meal after asking the Honorable Minister whether we should have a meal and what should we eat. We are becoming really some kind of a very extremely autocratic nation. which is not what our constitutional framers ever thought we should become. Certainly not. Democracy means freedom in every sense. And these freedoms are not fundamental because they are prescribed as fundamental in the Constitution. Remember, these freedoms are basic human values. So basic human values, if they are not being respected, then what to talk about the rights under the Constitution? Who cares for those rights? Who is willing to enforce them? You and I can take great pride that we have fundamental rights. What is the value of them if they are not going to be enforced by my judiciary or by the executive or by the police or by the politician, and they are being, breached on drop of a hat? It's really becoming an extremely serious situation, and I hope citizens
effectively in the last 40 minutes of our conversation, we've discussed the fundamental right to liberty, to speech, to livelihood, to privacy, to equality, and also to follow one's own religion. Effectively, you're saying this is all conditional.
Yes, it is. We have to live with new reality, that we must do what the government tells us to do.
Mr. Dave, you have access to the Supreme Court. If you give up hope.
Well, I love my Supreme Court. I love my judges, but all the same, I must say that citizens don't get justice, by and large. They do get selectively, but by and large, justice is one commodity which is very, very pricey in this country. Extremely rare to find, and we are at the mercy of the executive, the political leadership, the investigating agencies, the police, and the judiciary. We are at their mercy. That's the sad commentary. I mean, however good case may be, as Aryan Khan's, 24 days.
Yes.
If the man is not in possession of drugs, if he has not consumed drugs as his blood showed, on what basis can you even charge him, much less detain him, much less send him on remand, much less decline his bail? God save the country. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, Mr. Dave. Thank you for speaking with us. For our audience, the news is up at exactly 9 o'clock. Do take a look at it. Thanks for watching. Good night.